Trauma and anxiety. Awesome. Cool. Okay. So say Brandon is going to focus on trauma and anxiety. The first three emails of Brandon's email course are going to be the society problem. And so the society problem, these first three emails are, why have people been set up for anxiety, and why have people been set up in society for trauma? Okay. So we might say something like, the workload and the technology load of the brain has far exceeded where evolution has us. We are naturally going to be anxious. So the main goal of the first three emails is, it's not you, it's them. It's not you, it's society. Society has set you up for this problem. We aren't taught about trauma and anxiety. There's so many things that can traumatize us as kids. We might talk about generational trauma. We might talk about all the issues of the world. We might talk about politics, depending on what Brandon wants to focus on in regards to trauma and anxiety. He would focus on the, it's not your fault, basically, that kind of Goodwill Hunting. It's not your fault, Will. Those first three emails are, what, you have trauma and anxiety, you feel overwhelmed. It's not your fault. Well, and that's what we do in therapy so often too, is we normalize the problem. Like, who wouldn't have trauma and anxiety based on what you've been raised in? Like, you've been raised in this crazy environment. Of course you have trauma and anxiety. So we normalize it. The middle three emails are quick wins. So Brandon would think through, okay, what's a couple things that would take someone 1 to 3 minutes that's going to help their anxiety or their trauma in some way? We're not talking go find an EMDR therapist. We're talking, there's this new research that came out that said if you spend 3 minutes in nature each day, it reduces your anxiety by 10% for the next 90 minutes. Like, I just made that up. That's not true. Don't quote me on that. But like, say there is something like that says, honestly, if you just go outside without your phone, if you set your phone down, leave it in the house, and go outside and walk around your house, that's going to help reduce your anxiety. Try tapping, the other side for 5 minutes while, breathing and doing jumping jacks, like whatever the thing is, like, to have 3 quick win emails that say, here's something that you can experience really quickly. That then moves them over from Brandon is just blasting me with these emails to, what, Brandon helped me feel normal in the first couple emails. And then Brandon, like, I really experienced something. And so, imagine someone's doing tapping and they experience less anxiety for even 10 seconds. And then they're like, thanks, Brandon. Like, I don't even know you, man. And you just like send this email, and that's amazing. Like, I already feel great just because of these emails. I'm looking forward now to Brandon's emails. Like, I wish they were more than weekly. So then the last 3 emails are long-term habits. So these are, what do you need to do to overcome trauma anxiety? What do people that really want to get out there, what do they do? Now, we can talk about things like going to therapy, but in these situations, we want to think about, if this person never went to therapy, if they never reached out for help, and this was the only resource they had, what can we do to make this email a standalone thing that helps? So long-term anxiety, I imagine if people have more positive social relationships, that probably helps anxiety. And so what does a positive social relationship mean? It means having 3 to 5 really close friends that you can vent to. Okay. So we might have an email on how to make better friends as an adult, how to reach out to people, to connect with them, to get coffee, to say, if you want to be healthy, for the next 4 weeks, I want you to really try to like talk to people more at car line. I want you to talk to a couple people at your daughter's volleyball game, get to know some people. And if you click with somebody, maybe see if they want to grab a cup of coffee or something. So, so being able to then give those long-term habits in email numbers, that would be 7, 8, and 9. So we have 3, 3, 3. So why do we start with email? Well, first, it builds authority and expertise. You have to sort out what you teach differently from someone else. Trauma and anxiety, that's not new. If Brandon just says, what, I help people with trauma and anxiety, it's like, okay, who doesn't? Like, everybody does that. But the way he's going to talk about it, the way he's going to think through it is going to be completely different than any of us. If any of us said, what are the 3 ways you would talk about the societal problem? And we put that into the chat right now, we would have tons of different ways that we would think about why people have trauma and anxiety. So it helps you learn your voice. It also builds that authority, builds that expertise, and shows like, I'm not just some hack. I'm not just some like self-proclaimed expert. Like, I do this work. It also, second, gives a sense of who you are, your voice. You are learning as much as the people when you're writing this email course and saying, do I want to be witty? Do I want to be silly? Do I want to, give some personal stories? Like, man, there was this time I was in the grocery store. I had a full-on panic attack. I had to leave my milk right there and go out to my car. And I hope they put the milk back in the cooler because I just freaked out. Like, do we share personal stories like that? Are we more research heavy? Are we going to give some case examples? It's helping you really figure out your voice as a leader beyond just the one-on-one counseling. And third, it helps you stay in touch. Now, if you're on Instagram, if you're on Facebook, none of those things are bad, but you don't really own those audiences. So, for example, just recently, in the last month, all of a sudden Instagram started really pushing Reels. And so Reels, they want to compete with TikTok. And so they changed the algorithm. In Facebook, they changed the algorithm. You may have an audience of 50,000 people, but they'll only show your posts to 1,000 people. And then you have to like pay to reach the rest of your audience. Like, that's not fair, but that's their business. Whereas if you have an email list and people have opted in and they say, yeah, I want to get this trauma and anxiety newsletter, then it's like you own that audience. Our website went down a month ago for 2 days. And we were on the brink of emailing our email list to let them know. What had happened is our old dedicated host was this great small little hosting company down in like Arizona, New Mexico. I mean, I could pick up the phone and get the IT person and be like, something's going on with our website. And they were on it. Then they sold to this big, ridiculous company. And this big, ridiculous company had terrible customer service. When they switched everything over, our website went down, and then we couldn't even log in to try to get it back up. Our IT person couldn't even get in to switch it to his own hosting to get it back up. So it was this whole S show. But if that had stayed down and we didn't have a solution for it, luckily within 48 hours, we were able to get it back up. But like, say it was going to be down for a week. I could put that on Facebook, but it's not going to reach everybody. I could put that on Instagram, but it's not going to reach everyone. But if people have expected emails from me, they've enjoyed emails from me, hopefully. I know in the last couple of weeks, we've sent a lot of emails about this stuff. So you guys might kind of hate me in the email world, which is okay. But we just, sometimes people need to hear things a lot of times before they take action. But it helps you stay in touch with your audience in a different way, because email still is one of the number one ways that people stay in contact. The other one right now is text. You can't do as long of form in texting, but a lot of entrepreneurs are using text to stay in contact, to drive people to blog posts, drive people to podcasts. So when you're going from a solo or group practice into some passive income, the main goal is to create income that's not based on your clinical individual work, and it expands your audience. You're looking at going from one-on-one to one to a few to one to many. So the first step there is building that audience, having those followers that know, like, and trust you. And you really want to understand their pain and their transformation that they're looking for. And we want to continue to expand the content that is going well. So I wrote a blog post early on in Practice the Practice called How to Name a Counseling Private Practice. And I looked early on at my Google Analytics and saw that the main page and my about page were the number one and number two. But then surprisingly, number three was this blog post of how to name a private practice. It's like, why is that? And I realized that we were ranking number one accidentally for how to name a private practice. And so counselors, lawyers, psychologists were all coming to this page. So when you discover a unicorn, you make more unicorns. And so I did a podcast about how do you name a private practice. I updated that page as we got new ideas. So when people came to that page, it was more robust. We said, are you starting a practice because you're looking at how to name it? We have all these other resources that are totally free. Opt into our email course all about starting a private practice. And so then you find those things that work and you do those over and over in different ways. Next, after you have that audience, after you have at least 100 people on that email list, that's when you can start to look at growing your first product. And we have this process called the 3P process that I go really deep into in Thursday is the New Friday, but I'm going to give you kind of the quick version of it. So you want to talk with at least 20 individuals that are on your email list or in your audience. And so actually scheduling at least a 20-minute call with them where you're going to ask them 3 questions, the 3 Ps. So the first P is the pain. So let's keep the trauma and anxiety thing going. So imagine, Brandon builds this email list. He's got 200 or 300 people on it. He might be considering a podcast. He's not sure. He's like, I don't know. And the first question is, what's trauma and anxiety been like for you? So you're getting to the pain. How do the people talk about it? And so he's taking lots of notes around it, trying to find out what does his audience use in regards to words around pain. So these are people that they decided to take 20 minutes out of their day to just chat with you about a potential product you might launch. It's not a pitch, it's just learning. So they may say, oh man, sometimes it just overtakes me. I feel out of control. I feel like I'm just stuck. What are the words that they use to describe that pain? Then next, you're going to say, if I had a product that somehow helped with, and then you reflect back what they just said, helped with that stuck feeling, helped with that, if it was an e-course, it was a membership community, monthly, Q&A calls, if it was, some sort of self-paced e-course, like what would you want as some sort of product, and what would have to be in that? And so they then sketch out, what, honestly, I don't have time for another meeting, I don't have time for like a live learning Zoom, I'm so sick of Zoom at the end of the day. But I would go through like a shorter e-course on particular specialty things in anxiety. Like I'd want one just like about being anxious in the grocery store. Okay, I hadn't thought about being anxious in the grocery store. And so say 10 out of the 20 people say I would like something about being anxious in the grocery store. Okay, well, now we have a little bit of data to say there might be an audience here. There might be. And then last, we want to say, how much would you pay for that? So, when I was doing this with Next Level Practice, that's where I was thinking $29 a month or so. And people said way more than that. So you don't want to leave that money on the table. So you reflect back the pain, you then reflect back the product, and then you say, how much would you pay for that? And so say someone said, I want this grocery store, anxiety course. And they say, I would pay $30 for that. Then Brandon would say, you know what would have to be included for it to be $30? They may say, oh, I'd want like 5 hours of training. I'd want a free consulting call with you. I'd want to be able to do a like live event in your hometown where I can meet you. And it's like for $30, I can't do that. Okay. So then you can start to say, I have an audience of cheapskates. I have an audience of people that won't pay me. So you can say, well, I don't know about that. Or they may say, I want all these things and I'd pay $1,000 for that. If I could do one call with you a month and go through an e-course. So then you start to understand it, how much they would pay for it. But then the follow-up question is you double their price and say, okay, you'd pay $30 for that e-course. If it was a $60 e-course, what would have to be included in that for $60 to be a no-brainer for you? That's where you get to the things that they really, really want in it. So for example, with Audience Building Academy in the first round, we had this Audience Building Academy Elite. Part of that was some consulting calls. And so we decided not to split that up this time for Audience Building Academy because people needed them, but they got so much out of just the course. We decided to just keep the price lower so that then they could go through Audience Building Academy without, having those individual sessions, but they can still just like purchase those. And then you do a beta test where you then send a summary to the 20 plus people and say, hey, you were interviewed by me. Here's what I heard about pain. Here's what I heard about product. Here's what I heard about price. I'm excited to announce that in 2 weeks, I'm going to be launching the Anxiety in a Grocery Store e-course, and it's going to be $59, and it's going to include all these things. Click here to be the first person. We're going to be selling it for $99, but because you did the interview, we're going to do it for $69. Now, if you then don't have anybody buy, that tells you something. You have people that you've either missed the mark, you've missed the copy. These are people that just told you they'd pay that much for this course, but then they don't pay. So you want to be able to test it before you build all that. So that's how you launch the product. And then after that, we're looking at supporting all of this. So growing support for yourself so that you can go back and invest more of your creativity, ideas, and time with your audience, not into the email and the logistics and all just the minutia of running a new business. And at this point, you may potentially, depending on the income, it might make sense to spin off into a new LLC.